Ladies and gentlemen of the crypto space, we're live on a Wednesday, March 26th at 11:31 a.m. This is a nice stream today because it's a consolidation of just so many years of conversation. We're preparing. Are we preparing right now for a crypto bull market? No. This is something we've been preparing for years, literally years. And over the most recent years, maybe months in some regards, we made very clear statements of mode of operation, defined very clear rules, very simple rules that have manifested themselves in, from a hindsight perspective, what we've done over the years. And there's just such a great simplicity to the rules. It's so comforting and refreshing that we might as well reiterate them as much as possible. Rule number one: own more assets. Rule number two: know when to stop buying assets. And rule number three is fuck you, pay me. So that's as simple as you get. So the complexity is that's very counterintuitive to the vast majority of folks that engage with crypto markets or investing in general, because most people are like, I don't know what to buy. I don't know when to buy. I don't know what to sell. I don't know when to sell. But that the point of everything we've talked about is all of that thought process, all of that emotion and anxiety is irrelevant. That's what the rules are. Own more assets. Own more assets doesn't have any of that other bullshit in it. No one to buy. Well, I mean, it does. Well, number two is no one to buy. And frankly, know what to buy is really governed by rule number three. But rule number one plainly states buy more assets. Now, the question then becomes what assets? In which case, we refer to rule number three: assets that pay you and pay you well. And you probably want to defer to the XYZ equation. How much does it cost? How much is it paying? And how likely is it to continue to pay? Rule number two indicates buy shit as cheap as possible. Don't buy paying assets at expensive prices. So that reduces to you want shit that pays you. You want to buy shit as cheap as possible. So therefore, according to Buffett, you want to buy companies that are mispriced, businesses that are strong, functional, provide an incredible product, fintech product and service. And that has nothing to do with the price of its token slash whatever. That's it's not related. It's loosely coupled, but not directly related. So obviously, the what is the token? That's a great conversation in some regards. A token is gives you access to rule number three: pay me. So frankly, this is a relatively simple equation, and that's X Y Z. If the cost is lower and it's paying X amount, let's say 20%, then if the business is strongly monetized and capitalized and it's being consumed, then Z is in place. How likely is it to continue to pay into the future? And then you could get your excitement from how much does it cost? Well, it's likely the price of the asset will increase in the future, given it's a rock solid business. And it's likely that it will pay more in the future, given the business products and services will be consumed more in the future. So therefore, your principal will appreciate and your cash flow will appreciate as well. Your cash flow will increase as well. So these have been this introduction, which is now 5 minutes, is the culmination of years of work and redefining, or rather, maybe actually just defining rules of engagement and how to simplify the equation and how to engage with these markets. Now, folks on X occasionally say they ask me questions that I cover on the stream, like, "What's the point? What's the point of investing if you're not going to go above and beyond and exercise due diligence and really put in effort?" There's nothing easy about investing. This requires a mental reprogramming. And that's really the point of the stream. I throw very high level statements and sometimes exuberant statements on X. But all of that has tremendous amount of context and clarification and nuance associated with uh, the message that I clarify to the greatest extent possible in this conversation I have with you 3 times a week. It's not like I'm just randomly throwing out streams. This shit has been 3 times a week. I mean, when I first started this thing, it was 5 times a week. I stopped. I did a little 2 times a week. Now, been back to 3 times a week for quite some time now. So it's not like I haven't put in the due diligence to understand all of this shit. So I would hope more and more folks from X put in that kind of due diligence to take control over their financial well-being and then that complexity of our lives to understand a different way of doing things. Now, the everything, the stars are aligned right now, and folks are like, "What the fuck is he talking about?" So maybe even macro folks, but we've literally talked about that too. It's not like we've just talked about, "Ooh, this crypto token may go up in price." We've literally talked about the entire crypto space in terms of businesses, in terms of XYZ, in terms of the three rules, and we folded it into a macroeconomic framework to tell us the when. Now, clearly, last year has a hindsight story, and I have been, and I can say that I have been early on narratives. I was very early on the most bullish narrative in the crypto space is dollars. That I've said for some years at this point. Now, but this year, 2025, with administration policy and all the banks and investment firms and everything that's going on, all the stable coins, BlackRock, Fidelity. Oh my God, man, nailed that narrative. Dollar is the biggest narrative in this crypto space. So, and that's why the five businesses mean everything because the five businesses are literally dollars. Foreign exchange, credit, derivatives, liquidity financing, and liability printing. That's literally everything related to dollars. Foreign exchange, dexes, and credit is Aave, Lamaland, derivatives, convex, aura. List goes on and on. Obviously, F of X, it's all derivatives. Those boys have literally probably one of the best examples of derivatives in the crypto space is Aladdin DAO. Liquidity financing, voter escrow. Literally all liquidity. Isn't that ironic? Maybe it's ironic. Maybe it's interesting, most interesting that all liquidity financing businesses are wrapped in voter escrow partnerships. And we're going to go into voter escrow partnerships in a second. And then you have liability printing, which is all the endogenous stablecoins, CRVUSD, Magic Internet Money, Abracadabra having their financial complexity, but those boys are prepared. They have the capital available, and I think they'll be firing on all cylinders going forward. I think they can manage the situation. Um, but just all the liabilities, any protocol where there's debt and you're able to print the liability against that debt and manage that liability with interest rates, liquidity. The list goes on and on of the most interesting, but I've honed in on what I find the most interesting from an investment standpoint, and that is clearly CRVUSD and liquidity, aside from money also, but that's not investable. You could expose to the DeFi.money narrative, but that's not a current investment. All you're doing is getting points, speculating on what the future may hold. So dollar may rally. So this is the dollar. This is the DXY high level inspection of the dollar. It can go up. It could go down. No one knows what anything's going to do. Chart tells us the reality of the situation on the ground, day to day, minute by minute. That's just what it is. So it would be nice if it holds the 100 SMA in the weekly. Does it breach through? What do we know so far? There was a little bit of wick above. It's a weekly chart. It's Wednesday. Could hold as resistance, and that would be constructive in a positive sense. Hold as resistance, you fall back down to the 103.81 line. These are two critical lines, 107.35 and 103.81. You want to breach this 103.81 to the downside, quite a meaningful level as we've discussed in previous streams. And then eventually we need to attack the 200 SMA on the weekly, and a breach to the downside there is basically the gates to the quote unquote bull market in the crypto space. So we're in an unknown. There's always an unknown. Every day is an unknown. Does the dollar increase in value or does the dollar decrease in value? Never know. You don't know. This is a journey of us seeing what it's doing, not what we want it to do. And all we could possibly do is prepare for it to do what we know it should do in time, in the future. Dollar comes down. The administration literally says they want the dollar to be less valuable for geopolitical purposes. DXY has been DXY 10-year yields have been going up, and that's what's causing upward pressure on the dollar. Albeit, this is I mean, look, you got a bit of a head and shoulders there. You're below the 10 SMA on the weekly. 10-year yields are really forward-looking indicator on the value of the dollar. How about that? Be nice to see the 10 SMA hold. So clearly, the 50 SMA is just like a midpoint, and right now we're sandwiched between the 10 and the 100. You see a nice sustained breach below the 10, the 100 SMA, and you can see a mark move down on the DXY as well. So that's where we are. Horizontal action, nothing too constructive to say today from a macroeconomic standpoint. Curve ripping off the bottom, convex ripping off the bottom, a nice 10% move on the day. Curve retraced about 2% thus far. Back right into the 100 SMA on the weekly. Nice wick through. Let's see if we get continuation to the upside. If you got downside move, what's the downside target? The 10 SMA, 46 cents, 4 cents, 8 cents, over 10%. Pretty constructive chart though. Where was this? This line, 36 cents, was drawn, yeah, pretty much relative to the wick in April of 2024. That's a pretty decent level. It's not like there's multiple interactions. You had a close interaction back in December of 2020. You had it hold as resistance in August of 24. So it is constructive. It's not the strongest. It's not like you have a tremendous amount of high level touch points like when you look at the DXY and you're looking at like the 6 month chart and you have the 104th the 103.81 line literally resistance back in 17. I mean, it was spot on, and this is a 6 month chart, so there is more strength to that kind of level. And we have yet to breach that line. So we were looking at it in the weekly perspective, and we're like, oh, so what's the significance of that line? You have to go back to 2017 to understand the significance of that line. So you really want to see that breach of the 103.81 line. That means something relative to 2017. You see, this perspective only goes back to 2021. Albeit, they look at all the interactions with the 103.81 line. Look at this. Oh, it's literally congestion. Tremendous amount of congestion. Just want to see that breach of the 200 to the downside, whether it's secular or a secular trend. That'll take some months, 6 months, a year, maybe multiple years, 4 candles on the 6 month chart to give us a little heads up if we're entering a secular dollar bear market, which is my speculation. But you won't know that for some time, a year, two, three, so on and so forth. Anywho, so I did mention the point of the stream is preparation for a bull market. Because, oh, you're preparing for a bear market? All right. Do you have enough dollars? What else is there to do for a bear market? So, fortunately, in preparing for a bull market, you have accumulated assets, and those assets pay. Rule number one leads to rule number three. So, rule number three allows you to prepare for a bear market by accumulating cash. And so you can prepare for a bear market while you're also preparing for a bull market in choosing which assets to buy. So we've done that for the last couple of years, and now I have engaged rule number two that I am not buying assets because things are not as cheap as they were. Everything's off the bottom. Curve is over 100% off bottom. Even spell is 96% off bottom. The shit that everyone's complaining about on social media today. They're like, oh, all the token did is go down. It's literally 100% off bottom. So what does it mean? Folks bought at an expensive price. So the equation is you want to buy at a cheaper price. And that's not easy thinking back to 22 and 23, especially look at this chart down from all the way up here to all the way down here, but that's besides the point because people that buy down here don't give a shit where it was. They care about where it was most recently at the lowest lows, where it is currently, and thinking about where it's heading. So they don't care. Investors today don't care about where it came from. They care about where it's going. Hindsight is a bias for people that bought at the wrong price. And that bias is not held by people that happen to acquire at the cheapest price possible. Um, okay, so preparation, voter escrow. Now, I've spent a lot of time on voter escrow systems aside from investing. I've needed to understand how to manage this stuff from an entity perspective. You guys know about the trust, but the reality is trusts are too complicated for folks. It requires either OCD or money to pay someone else to have OCD. And if you pay an attorney to do that kind of documentation, they're not going to do it as well as you can do it if you actually spent like 1,000 hours on it or 5,000 hours like I have. You want something done right, do it yourself. Ain't that the truth? So that's something I did for myself, and I've gone over that with you, a lot of that documentation because that it's relevant, but folks need a certain amount of OCD to be able to do that, and that is above and beyond what most people have. In fact, I did a poll yesterday literally about the voter escrow contract, and here's what people say. So literally, this document, which is about 9 pages right now, it kind of changes everything, and nobody engages with it. The document's right here; it's public, and people are like, "When's the number go up?" And then the other ones they prefer evasion. I appreciate everyone that joins, and I don't mean this in a negative way, especially if you think it may pertain to you. What's the matter with people? We're talking about real life. We're talking about uh, um, repercussions. We're talking about business structure that may be favorable, that may give you an edge, that may give you tax advantage. We're talking about compliance and taking care of business and doing things well and doing things the right way and doing things as best as possible and putting in effort to make a difference in our lives. And and that's just literally not what this poll expresses. Oh, number go up. Well, that's clearly that's not anything we talk about. And evasion, what the fuck is that? I mean, literally, you have to. I just don't understand that. But I appreciate a couple of folks that voted that they read it. Now I understand it's a deep document. I mean, I wrote it in about a week. I think I started it last Friday, but that's obviously based on my experience with other components of the IRC. This is high level what it means. This is the eureka moment. A couple of folks on Discord brought up my initial version of the document was focusing on IRC 731, which is literally the core of tax deferral. But I didn't factor in IRC 701 to 703 with regard to income considerations. But the eureka moment was the nature of smart contracts and how they're discrete, often immutable. Discrete meaning separate entities. So the primary contract that people interact with is voter escrow. It's literally the voter escrow contract where you deposit your curve to make VE curve, and that you're able to vote on governance and gauge weights and so on and so forth, and that's managed by the voter escrow contract. But then other contracts, separate contracts in the overall protocol are discrete, they're separate. And those contracts rely on the voter escrow contract for information about distributions, like claiming V curve or vote market, okay? Your gauge weights. All the voter escrow contract is doing is providing information to the downstream contract. So that basically means the voter escrow contract is the, the partnership. It's where people are coming together, contributing capital. It's not like the partnership is using that capital, but the partnership, the voter escrow contract, is using that deposited capital of Curve to um, distribute governance, facilitate governance amongst the partners. And all the voter escrow contract does is aggregate that information and provide that information out to the rest of the protocol. Now, the kicker is all the LPs, all the transaction fees, all the conversion to CRV USD, it's all occurring in separate contracts. And ultimately, for distribution purposes, anything other than the voter escrow contract is basically an escrow service because the voter escrow contract has no actual capacity whatsoever to directly access or affect capital anywhere in the system. It's isolated, separate. It's not even protected. It's literally just not accessible whatsoever. So that's a concept of escrow, especially from a distribution standpoint. So when that CRVUSD accumulates, it's functionally and technically legally escrowed from the voter escrow contract, the partnership. So that changes everything from an IRC 701 to 703 perspective. So if the partnership is defined as the voter escrow contract, and the voter escrow contract never has a capacity to do anything with the accumulated capital throughout the week, which is property, by the way, then it never takes dominion. So in traditional finance, a partnership has bank accounts, and those bank accounts have KYC and titles and ownership, and people have access to them and governance. The board or the partners could come together and be like, all right, let's do something different with this accumulated capital. Let's invest it, or let's make a choice, a decision to do something with it. Yeah, no, then it's not escrow. Then you could invade that capital. Then, if you can invade that capital and make a choice and a decision with it, you have taken dominion of it. Now, dominion's a big thing. Dominion, in particular, is the core of income taxation, particularly Glenn Shaw Glass. And this is like the key quote that sums up the entire case. Although the case was dealing with more so income rather than like property, but this quote is used everywhere. Here we have instances of undeniable accessions to wealth, clearly realized, over which the taxpayers have complete dominion. Dominion, that word is everything with regard to income taxation. Now, in this regard, the escrow contracts and voter escrow systems, you do not have dominion over it. No matter what you want, no matter what governance says, you cannot take that escrowed capital and be like, all right, let's invest it or let's spend it. You can't do shit. You can't do anything with it other than the way those escrow contracts were coded. And given the nature of the protocol, for instance, Curve Finance, those escrow contracts are coded in one way to distribute, well, frankly, to first convert to CRVUSD, but that's irrelevant because de minimis accounting, the basis is basically the same. You know, if you accumulate $1,000 worth of transaction fees and you convert to 990 CRVUSD, you got a capital loss. So that's why I came up with what's called DMV, distribution market value. That's a whole nother story. But the point is, there's no dominion. You cannot affect those escrow contracts. nor invade them, nor do anything with them whatsoever from the voter escrow contract level. And that changed the equation. Without dominion, IRC 701 to 703 is not triggered. And 702, particularly in determining his income tax distributive share of the partnership's income. So with regard to income, what you want to do is go down to C. In a case where it's necessary to determine the gross income of the partnership, such amount shall include its distributive share. Okay, so now it comes down to what gross income is. So this is ties back into IRC 61, 62, and 63. So basically, gross income is where Glenshaw Glass comes into the picture. For something to be part of gross income, it needs to be realized, and the taxpayer has to have dominion of it. So, in my opinion, this document effectively navigates, and frankly, in AI's opinion as well, this document effectively navigates IRC 707, 701 to 703, which leaves IRC 731. And 731 is the fun stuff. So all this is this what this document does. It literally breaks down this whole goddamn situation. So the reality is taxation's deferred. When you hit the claim button on DE curve, and especially, especially when you hit this claim button, shit, on vote market, this is literally a separate protocol. The partnership is voter escrow. This is a separate organization, a separate, you have absolutely no control whatsoever of this. This shit is pure escrow. It is under control of someone else. So when you claim this, you certainly, the partnership is not taking dominion. So this is pure 731. Everything related to vote rentals is pure 731. In no way, shape, or form does the partnership have a capacity to do anything with a separate entity's contracts. Um, so 731 is relatively simple. Where's the quote unquote? Here. Or so the partnership basically has no tax liability. Partnerships are pass-through entities. So for the partners, the first quote is relative to money, but here the second quote is very simple. 731A1. No gain or loss shall be recognized by the partner. So notice how it's gain or loss. It's not related to income. Income is 701 to 703, but gain or loss is basically capital gains. So what does that mean? Basis, this is, so 731A, this should really talk about basis. So taxation deferred, um, taxation is deferred is what that means is basis is carried over. And what is basis? Y'all need to know basis for if you're investing. Basis is fair market value upon receipt. So if the escrow contracts are taking transaction fees and accumulating interest payments from CRV debt, um, the basis is the fair market value of the property that when at the time of receipt in the escrow contract. So obviously there's considerations and nuance with regard to conversion of those fees to CRV. So there's a change in basis to a degree because everything's just volatile and it's so fuzzy in crypto markets. There's volatility in there, and there's transaction fees and slippage, so on and so forth. So to encapsulate that, I basically created adjusted basis handling. I mean, adjusted basis is an actual terminology, but I created this distribution market value, it's fair market value, distribution market value. So how the hell are we, as the taxpayer, supposed to understand the fair market value of the damn tokens accumulated in the escrow contracts? That is just, it's not possible. Not possible from an accounting standpoint without literally specific accounting tools. So the best they're going to get from an accounting standpoint, and by they I mean the IRS, is literally DMV, which basically means you claim CRVUSD, boom, that's your basis. That's your distribution market value. Great. So I was excited about this when I observed this capacity to define voter escrow in terms of a partnership, because I saw the details of IRC 731, and then I was informed of 701 to 703, and I was like, oh shit. So we were able to solve that with the concept of nominee interest. So nominee interest is basically implies that the escrow contracts accumulating the property, uh, it's not taking dominion. It's a separate entity. It's not a person. There's no liabilities that could result from it taking temporary possession. It has a nominee interest in the property that it is holding, destined to be distributed according to property rules IRC 7031. So this concept is called nominee interest, and that solves a lot. It's literally a very standard tax phrase. I mean, it's literally not when a person collects interest on behalf of someone else. So the damn escrow contract, and I'm not fond of that interest fees. All right, fine, that kind of makes sense, but it's on behalf of someone else. Um, and here this is obviously just a definition. So they are responsible for paying taxes on the interest or to pass the interest on to the owner. And that's exactly what we're talking about with regard to partnership rules, and particularly the rules of IRC 731. They're passing that accumulated temporary interest slash fees, which is property. So this is further complexified because all of crypto is blanket treated as property by the IRS. It's not money. It's not interest. Interest is typically dollar denominated. Okay, so that's why this definition is a little bit off base. So basically, you could say in crypto terms, or pass the property onto the owner, which is basically the partners, which are us that deposit curve to get the ECRV. Um, I mean, literally, that's it. So that means technically, technically, and this kind of really needs statement, and you need to refer to this document. I got to make this document a lot stronger. This is about a weekend. It's going to get a lot stronger over time. So if you claim $1,000 worth of CRV USD, technically that's your basis. So clearly, if you spend that on $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, $1,000 to $1,000, um, there's no cap gains. It's nothing. It's the same basis. Now the Bitcoin appreciates and depreciates, and that changes the basis. And you can have a cap gains associated with that. But here's the kicker, and here's what have come to think is most interesting. By preserving basis in the distribution of property from the escrow contract to the partner, us clicking the claim button, if you take those stable coins and you accumulate them and don't reinvest them, and that's the cash account. And if you convert them to dollars in a bank account, technically there's a capital loss. So if you take $1,000 worth of CRV USD and convert it to USDC and convert it to USD in a bank account, you got transaction fees, you got slippage, and you're probably getting $975 from your $1,000. So fine, there's a capital loss, but that's the point. That's the point. You literally just carried over basis from the escrow contract, and we're able to get $975 into a bank account. That's it. There's no tax liability associated with voter escrow partnerships with regard to consumption of stablecoins, which are functionally comparable to dollars, but they're not dollars. They're property as defined by the regulatory authorities. So the twist on all of this is that this interpretation is not applicable to like a trust or whatever. This is applicable to everyone, an individual who elects to be a partner. And what does that mean? Buying curve and locking it as VE curve. No tax liability in the emissions, and that's directly from IRC code. Now, obviously, it's attackable. This is an attackable framework because there's novelty in the reality of DeFi. They could be like, all right, but there's defense. So there's argument for and against. So if you, I discuss use form 8275. So make this type of statement. This is a novel partnership, and this is my interpretation of the tax code, and that's it. And refer to this document at some point, or have an accountant or a lawyer review the document and have them do their own interpretation. Um, but with regard to law, substance over form, and Gregory Helvering is the key to substance over form. That is, it's called the substance over form doctrine. Um, the legal right of taxpayers to decrease the amount of what otherwise would be his taxes or altogether avoid them, tax avoidance is completely illegal, by means which the law permits cannot be doubted. And there's other ones that support this type of statement as well, including yada, 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 yada. It's literally substantiated repeatedly throughout history in pretty much endless court cases. The question to determine is whether what was done, apart from the tax motive, was the thing which the statute intended, substance over form. Well, the substance is clearer in a trust structure, where maybe the cash is only spendable for beneficiary interest, minors, children, property owned by the trust. So that is much more substance than if the spending of the CRV-USD output goes to Burger King or a trip to Aspen, Colorado skiing. So there's less substance in that as compared to children, which is further strengthened because of a trust structure, which literally says it's a fiduciary obligation that you can only spend these proceeds for this historically honorable kind of purpose, children. So the statute intended, um, so clearly the tax collection agency, the IRS, has a mandate to accumulate taxes, but they're an agency, which basically means they're interpreting the rules of Congress. And the rules of Congress are defined here. This is literally the rules of Congress. It's the IRC code. So they cannot go outside of the bounds of the rules of Congress, which is exactly why the courts have supported and substantiated and reinforced time and time again tax avoidance is completely reasonable. Use the rules, structure your business according to the rules, and apply the rules. And the agency, IRS, is literally just interpreting those damn rules, just as you are. There's no difference between them and you, other than they have more experience and more lawyers, but that's what I'm doing right here. Evaluating the rules, evaluating the law, using AI to help me, writing documents, structuring and defining what the hell is going on here. What are we doing? And using the law from Congress to my advantage. Just as Gregory Halbring said, the legal right of a taxpayer to decrease the amount of what would otherwise be his taxes or altogether avoid those taxes by means which the law permits cannot be doubted. Follow the law. So disclosure 8275 makes perfect sense. DMV could be disputed, distributable market value, and then what is the IRS going to do? Be like, how the hell are you supposed to figure out FMV? How are you supposed to figure out basis? What the fuck? That's some shit. Um, but here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. I should have this paragraph retained. Yeah, I should literally just bold this entire damn thing. And maybe I should just increase this to 13. I posted this. This is what I posted on X. I think it's a little bit enhanced since then, but downstream smart contracts remain distinct from the voter escrow contract. That's not disputable. That's provable. serving as immutable, external, discrete entities. The voter escrow contract merely contains information allowing escrow contracts to distribute pro rata escrowed property. Dominion of escrowed property never is realized by the voter escrow contract. That is literally Glenshaw Glass, IRC 701 to 703. In this regard, form meets substance because it is provable through the transparency and immutability of blockchain technology that the distribution processes of escrow contracts are not accessible by any person nor by the voter escrow contract, the partnership. This alignment of economic reality with structural design ensures the system's form accurately reflects its substantive operation, a principle critical to its legal and tax classification. Gregory Helvering, the substance over form doctrine, what are they supposed to say against the reality that it is provable that the partnership, the voter escrow, us with VE Curve, has complete inability, provable inability to access any of that accumulated capital in the escrow contracts? That's crazy. So as much as I roped in the concept of substance being considered through the lens of a trust and minor beneficiaries' children versus an individual going on vacation, what the hell are they supposed to say about that? There's no dominion occurring. There's nominee interest. It makes perfect sense from a traditional legal terminology standpoint. Us as trustees, us as voter escrow, we cannot say, all right, from now on, all accumulated fees are used to purchase more curve. We can the contract doesn't allow it. We could vote on governance to change the structure and behavior of contracts, but we cannot invade those contracts in real time. And if we do not have a capacity to invade those contracts in real time, we do not have dominion. Now, if we vote on governance to change the nature and relationship of the voter escrow contract or the rules and behavior of the escrow contract, all right, that's another story. And then a subsequent evaluation is required to evaluate if dominion is actually occurring. Anyway, okay. I hope that helps. This is there's still some clarity that's needed, some further supporting argument that's needed, but generally speaking, uh, given that it's Wednesday, this is about it's less than a week. We're talking about this 4 or 5 days in. Um, this is off to a good start. Need some further clarity on governance and what properties are mutable in the escrow contracts, and stuff like that. More firmly establish the concept that the voter escrow contract doesn't have dominion. And in that regard, you're further substantiating that partnership treatment in IRC 7031 is is real, it's applicable, and IRC 701 to 703 is literally avoided because no dominion. Yeah, I'm the Cap. Good morning, sir. Much pleasure. DCA man. Good morning, Cap. Mateo. Good morning, Cap. How do you calculate how much is EE curve going to pay in the future? You can't calculate, but you can get a gut instinct. If there's $300 billion in stablecoins in the crypto space, what happens if there's $3 trillion in stablecoins in the future? What happens if there's $10 trillion in stablecoins in the future? What happens if there's $30 trillion of stablecoins in the future? You can't calculate. That's not XYZ. XYZ is how likely is it to continue paying into the future? And now, if you consider 300 billion to 3 trillion, it's pretty interesting to think about what will happen in the future. Gillis, good morning. When moon, I mean, literally, so to break down that phrase, we're mooning right now. We're pre moon. The stars are aligned. What is moon? Moon meaning like, so you see me, like when moon, what, it goes up 10x in 5 minutes and then everyone dumps and it comes down 90%. So moon doesn't make much sense to me. For instance, if we go up 1,000% over 4 years, that's moon. And if you're going up 1,000% over 4 years, but you come up and then down 80%, you go up, you go down 80%, you go up, and you go down 80%, but over 4 years, you're up 1,000%. That's moon. So time frame, time preference is critical to this. You know exactly what I'm talking about at this point. You know it. Arrow, good morning, my friend. Hope everything is well. Pulse chain will moon. I can't help everyone, but thank you for listening. Fugo, good morning. Good morning. Much a pleasure. Would be interesting to juxtapose how this U.S. tax law compares to here in Germany or South Africa. Yeah, I'm not going into Germany or South Africa. Tax law. I think, from what I hear, Germany might be simpler. Might be able to do actually simpler things in Germany. Uh, that's just from the grapevine stuff that I've heard. I do not know, but listen, that's the thing about law. It's all public. It's literally all here. You go here, and for partnerships, it's basically subchapter K, and there's four parts. Part one, 701 to 709, tax liability is basically income, basically processing of income, and then part two is distributions, contributions, and distributions. And here's your 731. And here's your 731 here. Gain shall not be recognized to such partner. And this part is literally related to money. Money is not crypto. Crypto is property. So there's no gain associated with anything, any distribution by a partnership to a partner. That's it. It's literally, so it's literally like, that's the law. Then there's nuances, but that's the law right there. So the escrow contract distributes, there's nothing. So what does that mean? That means basis is preserved. Whatever the fair market value is entering the escrow contract, it preserves it when it's distributed to the partner. Yeah, I hope that helps. On a side note, how valuable do you think AI agents, so simplifying the process of locking, deciding and voting? I don't care too much about adoption by the general public. Um, so that's very popular narrative in crypto markets because people are like, adoption, adoption by who? Now, finance and economics is not simple. So yes, obviously we could argue that simplification of economics using AI can aid adoption by the general public. Um, I don't care. Why do I say that? Because the real world is filled with financial advisors and stupid 401ks where people are spoon fed a narrative that that's how it's done. So that's the vast majority of the population. So I don't care about general public adoption. I care about not institutional adoption, but I care about the general public consuming products and services that are spoon fed to them by financial advisors. That's the adoption that counts. So when Fidelity says they're going to start adding, you know, 2% of retirement accounts to Bitcoin, that's meaningful. It's possible that DeFi gets into that mix, possible of many things, but that's what I think changes the equation. It's not the general public. The only reason that we ever thought the general public needed to adopt all this complicated financial infrastructure is because prior to 2025, the administration was hostile. The world was hostile to crypto. That's no longer the case. Now it's the case that the world is like game on. game on, from the banking system to the SEC to the CFTC to the IRS to the damn executive branch. It is game on crypto. So that the stars are aligned for everything that we've talked about over the years. I don't need adoption by the general public. You either see an opportunity and take advantage of it or not. And the reality is, folks have had years. I mean, literally years. The market crashed in 22. We literally had a 2000. We literally had a 1929 Great Depression in crypto in 2022. And those were very cheap prices for Bitcoin. I believe Bitcoin was $16,000. By the way, that's a higher low. 2022, Bitcoin is 16 grand. That was a higher low. If you bought Bitcoin at 3 grand in 2020, you were up 600% at the bottom of the stock of the crypto market crash in 2022. And that is rule number one and rule number two. Own more assets, know when to stop buying assets, which basically means own assets as cheap as frickin' possible and don't buy them at expensive prices. But all this stuff gets so much simpler for kids in their 20s. It's dollar cost average. Just own more frickin' assets and learn about different types of assets that do different types of things that maybe have favorable tax treatment, which is literally conversation we just had. I mean, what is this comparable to? What is this damn voter escrow contract, voter escrow partnership comparable to? Maybe it's comparable to like an accessible Roth IRA. So it accumulates property and you can take money out of the Roth IRA when you're exercising it and there's no tax liability. So this is literally an accessible Roth IRA. So what crypto did was create a real-time Roth IRA of sorts. Albeit it's kind of like an inverted Roth IRA because capital gains is still applicable. So if you have a crypto portfolio and you know you're taking your CRVUSD and you're reinvesting in Bitcoin and $1,000 worth of Bitcoin turns to $3,000 worth, there's $2,000 capital gain. So this has overtones of like a Roth IRA with regard to anything that comes out is just coming out and you can spend it. But anything that's going on internal still has capital gains IRC 1001 considerations. Now, obviously, there's other components to crypto that are not applicable whatsoever to the voter escrow partnership and distributions and escrow and all this shit that I just talked about, like staking in a blockchain that's producing new tokens. I don't even care. Like I would need to look into it. I would need to think about it. I would need to model it and frame it. But it's new tokens, so it's not like this an escrow contract. It's a completely different set of considerations, and to the point where, whatever. I mean, the odds are with regard to new tokens, the standard IRS memorandums are applicable, even though they've been withdrawn. I mean, what those memorandums were with the legal counsel doing their interpretation of the tax code. And I'm, I mean, as much as those memorandums make sense, the Jarrett case kind of is considerable as well. So Jarrett was staking rewards, wherever the hell it is. Here, Jarrett v. the United States. I was staking Tezo staking rewards, and the IRS gave him a refund of $4,001.83, including interest. So the IRS memorandums say, all right, if you're staking and you get Tezos emissions, you owe income tax on those emissions. So the Jarretts paid 4,183 in payments and income tax payments, and the IRS refunded, gave him a refund for it. Probably because they didn't want to set a bad precedent. Probably maybe possibly a cost benefit analysis, meaning it would have taken them 20, 30, 40, 50 grand to go through court. And they're like, we're not going to spend 50 grand just for to keep $4,000. So it's a cost benefit analysis. Or, I do speculate they didn't want to set a negative precedence because it's property. So look how I just decompose partnerships, probably decompose the concept of staking and the creation of new tokens, um, and frame it around property in that in a way that's favorable. So they were fearful of potential interpretations of Congress's words. Congress's words. The IRS words don't mean anything whatsoever. Post Loper Bright that basically means nothing. What matters is the words of Congress. In which case, we literally can view the words of Congress by looking at the IRC code. Anywho, so well, what else is there? There's maybe there's what other staking is there? I mean, you have obviously you have standard like Bitcoin staking versus oh, I'm sorry, you literally have like Ethereum staking. I mean, there's governance in there, but the new token, no, it mints new tokens. There's an inflation, so there is minting. It's not like, the priority fees and the fees associated with transactions because those probably go to escrow. I don't think they're. I would have to inspect the structure of the block of the contracts, but I mean, well, you see, this is why you would literally have to break it down granularly, and it takes 10, 20, 30 pages to do that. I mean, maybe Ethereum staking has overtones of this type of partnership because there is governance, and that governance does not have access to priority fees and transaction fees. They get redirected as to staking rewards. So they probably go to an escrow contract. But how do you encapsulate or consider the emissions, the inflation rate? So I don't know, but I don't do any of that stuff, so I'm not going to spend my time on it. Suffice it to say, I clearly am most interested in the concept of voter escrow because the code is right there. The code is right there. I mean, literally the IRC code, subchapter K. This is all you have to read. Throw all this shit in Grok 3 on think mode, or if you have ChatGPT Pro, or I don't know about Claude 3.7, but ChatGPT Pro or Grok 3 in think mode. It's literally 4 sections. This isn't a lot of stuff to review. Only a couple of subparts. Clearly, literally, it's just these two subparts. IRC 701 to 755. So it's 55 IRC codes to inspect. And AI does that really quick. And that's literally what you get out of something like this kind of document. It's not like AI spits out this document. So I wrote the whole damn thing. And then you use AI to, remove repetition, to organize and to enhance and isolate sections and have proper legal tone and semantics and obviously factor in quote unquote statements from judges of the Supreme Court, and you pull all this shit together and you're able to make a compelling argument. Where's the conclusion? It's somewhere around here. Practical guidance conclusion. The document establishes a robust and practical framework for addressing the tax implications of voter escrow systems by analogizing them to partnerships on the IRC. Rooted in economic substance, Section 2, this analogy aligns with the broad definition of partnerships. Pretty simple. Shared governance, decision-making capacity, shared profit and loss, and a capacity to influence the future of the partnership. Pretty straightforward. IRC 731 ensures tax deferral for property distributions. We went through that. That's Section 3. Affecting the system's decentralized design and economic reality of discrete immutable contracts. Smart contracts, smart contracts. Compliance. In the post Loper Bright era, Loper Bright, do I have a section Loper Bright? Yeah. So let's do something like this. Insert, bookmark, where the hell is it? Conclusion. In the post Loper Bright. So this is how you enhance a document by linking shit. And people are like, oh, boom, boom, boom. That status prioritizing statutory text and monitoring judicial trends provide sustained path forward. This interim solution. So it's an interim solution because the Congress has not given us any guidance. Here's the IRC code. We're interpreting the IRC code. Lawyers at the IRS interpret the IRC code, but they're doing nothing different than we're doing, especially with our capacity with AI. This is what everyone's got to go on. I don't give a shit if this is novel or not. This is real. These are the words of Congress being applied to what the hell we're doing, unless the IRS issues specific guidance tailored to. It's not the IRS. Congress issues specific guidance tailored to DeFi protocols. It's not the IRS. Goddamn Congress. So don't be afraid. Y- When you're afraid, you engage. Have to move forward. It's not the IRS. It's Congress. And what did I do in this document? Um, yeah, yeah. This is actually a really good statement. Check this out. This is kind of what I'm talking about right now. This memorandum respects the separation of powers and adheres to the statutory text as required by Wilbur Bright. It's de novo interpretation. De novo is the reading of the words of Congress reflects the letter of the law and congressional intent. The IRS's potential pushback, while perhaps rooted in practical concerns, all right, they're concerned, cannot override this legal reality. Should economic developments necessitate a shift in tax policy, Congress, not the IRS, holds the authority to enact such changes. In the interim, the memorandum's position remains both legally sound and authoritative. Put your foot down. Don't let the system walk go over you. You have a leg to stand on, especially with AI nowadays. It has the capacity to process tremendous amounts of information. It's not a lawyer. The damn AI is always saying, "Oh, we're not a lawyer." Okay, you're not a lawyer, but you understand language. You understand the definition of words. You understand semantics, which is the basically the definition of words, but the semantic structure of a sentence is the relationship of words in a sentence to give a capacity to express intent. There's a couple of very interesting things with regard to intent. I'll digress a little on some legal stuff. Where is it? 641. I hit this section hard. It's a heck of a section right here. So, expressio unius est exclusio alterius, which is basically by enumerating specific types of inclusions, Congress explicitly expresses non-inclusion. Direct code from Russello v. United States, a couple of court cases, which is basically the Russello principle. Nascitur a socius. I don't know how to. This is all Latin shit. It is known by its associates. So you get context on statute by other shit around it, which is applicable to people as well. Known by its associates, interpreted in light of its context. The whole act rule, reading statute in harmony. Well, this is obviously applicable to subchapter J, but it's similar to known by its associates because the only way you can understand one component of statute is to understand where it is and the intent of an entire subchapter, for instance, the whole app rule. So I give application of these canons of statutory construction. So you can literally break this stuff down. And that's literally what I do in other documents. The word, the deliberate choice of a particular word. They go on the offensive a little bit. Why do you go on the offensive a little bit? The legal right of taxpayer to decrease the amount of what otherwise would be his taxes or altogether avoid them by means which the law permits cannot be doubted. I'll give you another fun one, and I'm going to end the stream in a couple of minutes, I promise. I read this to you guys. What is, where is it? Huh, where is it? I swear that was counter arguments. Oh, that wasn't a counter argument. Here it is. Tax avoidance is legal. Avoidance is not evasion. Evasion is when you don't tell them what you've done. So when people say shit like this, when people say shit like this, it's literally just lazy as fuck because you could literally tell them what you've done and frame it in a way that's like, all right, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. What are you going to do about it? And there's a process to that. They say, all right, what were you thinking? Give us information. Or no, we don't agree with that. And then you have a chance to say, yeah, that's not up to you. And you give them documentation. And then the worst it does is it goes to a judicial situation. That's the whole point. The point is has nothing to do with what the IRS thinks. They're a bunch of lawyers. In a court of law, it's Congress versus you. Congress versus you. And that's why we read Congress's words. Where was it? Avoidance reflects statutory form to lessen immediate tax liability. This is quote unquote shit right here. Form absent exceptional circumstances reflects substance. Persons may adopt any lawful means for the lessening of the burden of taxes, which in one form or another may be laid upon property or profits. That's California stores versus McColgan. And then this one is Edwards v. Commissioner. And then this one is Week versus Slibley. These are all court cases. And then this one is literally the revenue manual. This is literally the manual of the avoidance of taxes is not a criminal offense. All right, listen, I'm done. I'm done. I spend too much time on this shit. I get excited by it because this is how you prepare for a good market. This is how you prepare for shit going well. What you know what I'm saying, guys? What's the point of not preparing? Prepare. Do the best you can. Because this isn't a game. This is literally real life. And this is not just for I want to buy a fucking Ferrari. No, I don't want a fucking Ferrari. I want to put food on my table for my family. I want to take care of my home so I can actually have a home. This is important stuff. This isn't the narcissistic, loudmouth on social media, or person that's, oh, I got to go to the club and I have jewelry dripping off me and shit. This is literally how you take care of yourself and your family and protect yourself and your family from people that want to take shit from yourself and your family. I mean, just, if you have kids, and I would imagine a lot of you do, just think of your kids if you need motivation to go above and beyond and do something a little bit more, do something a little bit different that what other people don't do, that what other people neglect and just are disinterested in. I sure as hell know that is a great motivator for me. Wednesday, March 26th, 12:40 p.m. Thank you all for joining me today on a little bit of ranting and raving, a little bit of legal analysis, a little bit of macroeconomics, and telling us where the hell we are in this complexity we call an economic system. 182 people made it to the end of the stream. I appreciate each and every one of you, and you are all now a little bit more rational because of it. It is only Wednesday. I will see you guys and gals later this Friday. Until then,